Welcome back to Legitimate Targets, everybody. I hope you're all having a great day. I've got the one, the only retired U.S. Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar joining us once more. Everyone be sure to go subscribe to his YouTube channel. We'll have it linked in the title and in the description for all of you. Anthony, thank you so much for joining me. I want to start off by talking about the strikes we're seeing right now. Lots of Iranian Shahed 139 drones headed to what seem like just average buildings, apartment complexes, hotels in these Gulf states. And we'll talk more about the broader war in a moment. But what do you make of these? Is it true what they're saying that, like U.S. military personnel regularly stay at these locations and this could be precision strikes?
Yes, I think that what we're seeing right now is the Iranian response is measured. We saw overnight the tempo and the cadence of missile bombardment into especially Tel Aviv, but Haifa as well. Haifa is where the USS Abraham Lincoln is anchored off of, and I'm sure that there's probably senior ranking U.S. personnel that protocoled there to work with the IDF senior leadership. So that's obviously a strategic target. And here's what I think is in Iran's game plan, because they're technologically advanced. They have the Shahid one-way drone is advanced. The administration didn't talk about something at all that happened on the 22nd of February that I think is very important. And over the Strait of Hormuz, an MQ-1941 or an MQ-41C Triton, the bigger brother to the MQ-9 Reaper, was compromised and lost over the Strait of Hormuz by Iranian interference. And I don't think Iran took control and crashed that. I think they took control and landed it. And they've since are working reverse engineering to see the GPS uplink download code to then modify their one-way Shahid and their ballistic missiles, which, because all these operate off of GPS, off of cryptology, off of upload download signal. So I think that Iran is honing in that while they also use the opportunity for specific strikes. We saw the strike in the facility where Fifth Fleet personnel are housed in headquarters in Bahrain. We saw the strike in Qatar. So yeah, I think that to see the limited nature of Iran's response right now should not be considered a position of weakness. They are operating from a position of realigning pieces on the chessboard. The way it looks to me.
Yeah, because there is that argument that, Iran said that the moment something happens, all hell will break loose. I mean, we have seen a lot of U.S. bases hit. We saw one, low-level Navy ship that I guess may have been hit. I've seen no proof of it, but they claim to have hit it. And Israel, of course, was hit, some intelligence posts and whatnot. But there's been no widespread attacks on the, however you say it, the Muwafaq Air Base in Jordan, which houses most of the U.S. air assets, or on the U.S. Aircraft carriers. Nothing like that.
Not yet. I think if you look at the composition disposition of U.S. forces, we are not staged in the region for a combined arms ground fight, infantry, artillery, armor, combined arms maneuver. This will very much, in the initial phases, at least for the next few days to week, be Navy, Air Force type of campaign. So if you look at where we have our resources, the USS Abraham Lincoln is in the Mediterranean off of Haifa. The USS Gerald Ford is off of the Persian Gulf, within the Persian Gulf having, because a carrier strike group such as the Abraham Lincoln and the Gerald Ford, don't travel just the aircraft carrier. They have battleships and destroyers, tenders, reconnaissance ships that travel with them. That's why it's a U.S. carrier strike group. So in that grouping in the Persian Gulf, there are U.S. Navy vessels that are certainly within that immediate strike pattern, where they can be struck by either Houthis, proxy forces, or Iran directly. So that's a risk. I really think that right now I don't think that Iran was necessarily caught off guard by this, but I still have on my phone because I was in Israel during the 12-day war. The entire 12 days of
Mhm.
that 12-day war, I was in Israel. So on my phone, I still have there's an app that if you're in it, for those that are in Israel, Tel Aviv, Ashdod, most like, certainly have the application on their phone for the missile defense warning system. So I still have that on my phone. So, at around early hours this morning, my phone was going off, meaning that Israel was preparing for their defenses. So I was having flashbacks to the 12-day war when we were getting missile bombardment in Beersheba. But I looked, and then sure enough, we see Donald Trump posting on social media, on Truth Social. This is not a president that's sitting behind the Resolute desk and giving us an update as an American president. He posted to his social media account. It looked to me that they probably rolled him out of bed because he's down in Mar-a-Lago. Let's take that into context here, that the president of the United States, well, he stood on stage and said that Americans might die and that's just the way it is down partying in Mar-a-Lago while he's ordering these strikes. And I think they probably rolled him out of bed. He probably didn't have the eye boogers out of his eyes yet, and they slapped a USA hat on him, pulled down real low to look menacing but also to cover the bags under his eyes. And I don't think the president of the United States probably knew either. I think that what I suspect, and what I have suspected before in the 12-day war as well, is that Israel pushed this. Israel jumped the gun. Israel pushed for this. This is something that they have told us that they wanted. They have told us that they don't want to negotiate. And to be clear, we had negotiations ongoing in Oman with the lower level negotiators, the Kushners and the Witkoffs. But then in Geneva, at the International Hotel de Genève, where they do a lot of these negotiations, we had representatives from the U.S. State Department and higher levels of the negotiations team from Iran. And Iran brought to the table and said, we will destroy our stockpile and not stockpile enriched uranium. It's a negotiation. It's not a one-way, here, you capitulate. It's a negotiation. Um, so I don't think that the United States administration really thought that those negotiations would succeed, but I think that they were trying to massage that a little bit more to be more on the side of justification of diplomacy. And I think Israel jumped the gun. I mean, we know that the first strikes into Iran last night were Iranian, or excuse me, were Israeli, not
Mhm.
U.S. So I think that caught the U.S. off guard a little bit, and Israel went in kind of Leroy Jenkins, and the U.S. followed suit to make it look like this was a coordinated effort. But it doesn't seem very coordinated to me in terms of the U.S. strikes that we've seen thus far. They seem what I would call probing ballistic missile strikes. Where is
Mhm.
the Ayatollah?
Well, yeah, we've seen a lot of those strikes on, I guess, presumed missile complexes, some missile launchers. We, of course, saw the reports and one satellite photo of the strikes on the residence of Ayatollah Khamenei, as well as allegedly on the location of President Pezeshkian. And I want to get your thoughts on that in particular because we were supposed to get a speech from Khamenei, never happened. The Iranian foreign ministry spokesperson just came out in an interview on BBC and said that he, at this time, cannot confirm whether the top leadership are still alive. Not a good sign. And but Trump was also supposed to give a speech. That didn't happen either. What do you make of this? It's like a standoff of who gives the first speech, and maybe Khamenei's speech will be pre-recorded. Maybe they're not going to release a speech. What do you think of all this?
A lot of unknowns, but if you just feel out the kind of the tone and tenor, I think that if you look at it from a matter of justification of war, jus ad bellum, jus post bellum, jus in bello, the justification to go to war, the fighting of war, and the peace afterwards, we have no justification for this war. We don't. There's no standing, moral, ethically, or legally. And I think the administration is trying to balance that. We saw in the days leading up to this, it was all about um, nuclear facilities. And then, again, just yesterday, Trump had told us all that in June these sites were obliterated. Well, when I looked up in the dictionary the term obliterated, it means completely and utterly destroyed and to never be used again. So if Iran went from obliterated sites in June to fully up and operating to having a nuclear missile by Monday, according to Israel, I mean, wow, we should work with Iran to figure out how to colonate Mars, because that's pretty damn impressive. So it's a lie. We all know it's a lie, and I think that this war is less about foreign policy and more about domestic policy with what the Trump administration is wrestling back home. This is a perfect distraction, and it also gives Israel what they want. But to your point about the who speaks first, is it possible that the Ayatollah was struck in these precision strikes in the downtown apartment? Because remember, Iran's quote unquote weekend is through. They would have been going back to work today Iran time. So that would have been a Monday, to them a Monday morning going to work. So you can imagine the young children in school, such as the 84 young girls at a girls' school that were struck and hit with 40 plus killed potentially. So normal day, everyday Iranians were going about their workday. And could this initial strike have potentially killed senior Iranian leaders? It's very possible. Is it possible that the Ayatollah was struck and could be dead? That is possible. I'm not saying that's a sure thing. It certainly is a possibility. We'll see what comes out. Iran is usually doesn't jump the gun on the media like we do. But the other thing we have to consider is here in the U.S. and you particularly are very in tune to this, and I really appreciate your platform because you pull in so many different perspectives. Like your awareness of world news is very impressive. But when you look at the average American here in the United States, that's coming from CNN, which is now owned by Larry Ellison. That's coming from Fox News. So you're not getting the whole story. We're not getting the whole story. I do think that in these initial strikes, especially at the military headquarters in Bahrain and potential strikes in Qatar, I believe that there are many, 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 if not potentially into the hundreds of U.S. servicemen and women dead. We probably won't be getting those reports until later, if ever confirmed clearly. So I think what most Americans need to realize right now is that you need to start searching for other sources of information because you're not going to get it from Fox News and CNN.
Yeah, I mean, I saw there were some posts today saying potentially hundreds. That was like midday, maybe, or maybe 2, 3 p.m.
And
Iran
that's what
time.
that's what Iran had put out. And I'm not, it's always,
No,
every
yeah, exactly. That's what I'm
yeah.
saying. But on the other side, you have the US saying, no, 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 we evacuated everything. It's all there's nothing. So maybe
That
somewhere in
yeah,
between
I
there.
you're right. It's somewhere in between. And when you look at is it hundreds? It could be depending on the vulnerabilities and where the strike was conducted. I assure you that the United States military, especially in a garrison like environment, they couldn't evacuate a paper bag quick enough to get out of there in time. So
Mhm.
I'm just knowing this from being deployed a lot. And when you become an occupational garrison like force, like in Bahrain where the Fifth Fleet is, or in Qatar where we have the Al Udeid Air Base, you become very complacent and very, kind of in it's the evacuations aren't quick. So is it possible that many service members were injured, wounded, potentially killed? Yes, it's very possible. Those numbers are going to increase. And what I will warn all Americans is that um, you know, what made me really sick last night, or as I woke up to the live, or his right after he posted it. I guess it wasn't live because he posted it to Truth Social. But when I watched that, what really made me sick is to sit there and listen to this president, a five-time draft dodger, sit there and say that this war, there will be casualties, and that's just what often happens. That's just the way it is. And that is so disgusting coming from this president who has no morals, no ethics, does not understand conflict and war. And what really scares me is that in the 25 years that I was in the army, and I've put boots on the ground in every conflict that this nation has fought in the last quarter century, if now the objective is regime change, which that now seems to be, we've already started mission creep on day one of the mission. That's concerning. It was nuclear facilities and everything else, and now it's regime change. We're just gonna throw out every strategic word vomit that we can. Regime change, nuclear facilities, freedom, democracy. We're just gonna throw these words out there and see what the American people latch onto. And when you look at that, well, if it is truly regime change, that's not going to happen without boots on the ground. And we
Mhm.
plan for a boots on the ground years ago, the United States military constantly keeps con plans or concept plans, mission plans on the shelf. We got everything from the zombie apocalypse to, if the world exploded. So when you look at that and you see what's on the shelf, uh, ground incursion, combined arms maneuver from the west, like from Iraq going into Iran, would be a suicide mission. The only way to do it with any type of arms maneuver and have a combined arms maneuver fight on the ground force, Marines, Army, Air Force, Marines, or Navy all cooperating, would be from the east, which would mean we would have to go back into Afghanistan. Right now, Pakistan and Afghan and the Taliban are fighting each other. Sounds like prime pickings for another incursion. So I'm very concerned about how this can expand quickly because I do not trust this administration. I also know that Iran is technologically advanced. They have ballistic missiles, they have one-way drones, they have proxy forces that are capable. And this has not only the potential, I think this is not going to be limited like it was in June. Iran is not going to sit back and say, okay, are you done now? Are you done? Can we please act like adults and start going back to negotiations? Are we done? I don't think Iran's going to sit back and take it lightly, especially if the Ayatollah has been killed.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to watch because obviously there are forces in Iran, who've got a lot of money trapped overseas, who I'm sure view this as an annoyance, something that should be brought to an end, right? But on the flip side, you do something as stupid as attacking during Ramadan,
Mm-hmm.
killing Khamenei, it's like, well, what do you expect is going to happen?
Oh yeah, the response, and you know what? I don't call it retaliation. Retaliation would insinuate in a way that they're just striking back unjustifiably. Iran has every right under international humanitarian law, under the Geneva Convention, under laws of armed conflict, every right to respond. Every right. And to, for anyone on the American side to say, oh well, striking Qatar, that was that's a war crime or that's a violation of international law. Now certainly there's implications because the US has positioned itself in sovereign nations throughout the region, but to
Yes.
strike the US airbase in Qatar or the Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, those are legitimate military targets, and Iran
The
would be
citizens of
responding
Bahrain seem to
justifiably.
agree.
What's that?
The citizens of Bahrain seem to agree. They seem very happy. I've seen these videos of them all celebrating every time one. And I also just saw that I haven't seen any strikes confirmed, but I saw air raid sirens going off in Muscat too, which is very interesting. We hadn't seen that all day.
Yeah,
But
I mean, the region is going to, and here's what I'm still kind of trying to feel out because it's on one hand you have Arab nations, Gulf nations, nations throughout the region saying, okay, Iran, you're hitting us. Like, however, what's fresh in the minds of every Arab nation, especially those nations that own territory between the Euphrates and the Nile, what's in their head right now? What Mike Huckabee said last week: Israel can have it all. So if you're an Arab nation and you're looking at who do I side with in this, it's probably not going to be the United States because right now the axis of evil is the U.S. and Israel. And the world, as we saw, World War One didn't start, one, two, three, four, I declare a thumb war, everybody take their sides. Those things meticulated and morphed until there was sides that were solidified in terms of the Entente and the axis of evil. So same thing in World War Two. Americans seem to think that World War Two started when we went into Normandy. That war had been raging for years prior to that, with the various allies positioning. Who would have thought that we would have been allied with the Soviets going into that war? But we were. So when you look at how these alliances may form, I think that for every Arab nation leader, in the forefront of their mind, especially for their populations and their people, is also, wait a minute, the United States just last week said that from the U.S. ambassador's mouth that Israel can have it all. Who, if we side with the U.S. in this and Israel succeeds and is triumphant, because let's make it clear, this is Israel's war. It's not our war. This is Israel's war. And if they succeed, well, then we're all next. They've said it. So it's going to be very interesting over the next few days to see the delicate balance of strikes, diplomacy, how alliances form, and who's on what side. And I do not feel that the United States is going to be in a good position. We are already unjust in this conflict. To me, that is unequivocally clear.
How long can these U.S. Carrier strike groups remain? How long can the carriers remain in their positions without having to go back to port? And in particular, I guess also considering the fact that maybe there may be a little bit of mutiny on board, some sailors shoving shirts and objects down into the toilets. I mean, how long can they operate?
Well, so the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald Ford are both nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, so they could be out there for forever. It's a matter of, the logistics and the personnel. So when you look at the rotation cycle specifically, and we, as military planners, these are things that we always have to balance: rotation, personnel, logistics. Things break. So the USS Abraham Lincoln was in the region. And then you remember we on its way back to go to port to, up to Virginia for what they call port tendering, where it goes into a refit cycle. You get a new crew on board. You get a new captain. You refit the ship with logistics. You clean out the nuclear rods. You get it all ready to go again at Newport News, Virginia. So as that was going to happen, we said, stop, go to the Caribbean. They were down there, and then we said, stop, go back to,
So it's the
so the
same
spread,
crew?
it's the same crew. Yeah. They're going on 8 months. So, that crew has not been switched out. That
Wow.
aircraft carrier strike group has not been tendered or maintained or maintenanced. And we're talking about very sophisticated electronics, weapotronics systems that require maintenance and calibration, etc. And Abraham, that is why I think, because if you look at the capability analysis, why the USS Abraham Lincoln was sent to sit off the coast and anchor in Haifa, so they have ability between Cyprus and Haifa, somewhere sitting in between there to provide additional support to the Iron Dome, to also bring in soldiers. I think over the next few days, we're going to see thousands of Navy personnel being flown through Turkey, probably through Ankara and Istanbul, into Cyprus to start switching out that crew, because that crew is not switched out. But then also switching out that crew, but then also trying to maintain that fleet for the long run, because that, I hate to break it to the folks in the USS Abraham Lincoln CV-76 Strike Carrier Group, you're not coming home anytime soon.
No wonder they were maybe trying to disrupt the sewage flow. I probably would too. Even if I was brainwashed and gun ho about the whole thing, I'd be like, no, screw this.
So I was thinking about those sailors, and 8 months is a long haul, but back in the surge days of the global war on terror, when we were surging in both Iraq and Afghanistan, the average deployment for us at the time was 15 months.
Mhm.
And I was an infantry platoon leader in Iraq, and I was in a striker unit. Strikers were new at the time, and the army only had 2 striker brigades. And we were there, and the other striker brigade that was coming to relieve us would have made the only 2 in the army. And at the time, General Casey wanted 2 striker brigades, so we had to stay. And it ended up being an 18-month deployment. And the way it destroyed morale, destroyed the unit, destroyed the operational cycle. What this administration does not understand from the top down, and I'm talking about General Kane. General John Kane does not have an understanding of combat operational troop deployments and rotations. He was an F-16 fighter pilot in the Air Force Reserves, who was called the chairman. He doesn't have a clear understanding of these things, and he's the advisor to the president. And then you have the service chiefs, who have all been. Think about the Navy. How many service chiefs has the Navy gone through just in the last year? They fired and replaced twice. And then the Admiral Halsey in Southern Command, that was a Navy admiral. The Navy is in a bad position right now with its mission command and leadership. So when you think about that, you always have to think about the second and third order effects. And in this conflict, the United States is went into this on the back foot, and hoping that in that back foot, we got a few haymakers, but you know it's we're not in a good position. And I fear, I fear that thousands of soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines are going to die. And it's clear to me that both Trump and at least the U.S. ambassador to Israel are fine with that. So to every American out there, ask yourself, what what is this war for? What are thousands of Americans going to die for? It's not for U.S. interests. I can tell you right now, if you were to go into the administration right now, into the war room and say, okay, you go to that room, you go to that room, you go to that room, none of you talk to each other. I want you tell me, why are we there? Oh, regime change. Okay, how about you? Why are we there? No, nuclear weapons. Okay, why are you there? The Ayatollah's bad. Okay, why are you there? Iran has been bad for 20 years. The president last night talked about Iranian, threat going back to like before we were born, man. Like, I'm just like, what is going on here? Like, what is happening? That we are on the wrong side of history. This is an unjust war, and the United States is in a very precarious position globally, regionally, tactically, operationally, and unfortunately, if if some I feel like I almost feel like it's kind of too late now because of the strikes that have happened. This is not something you can put the genie back in the bottle in. This morning, if you watched the various news, what I try to do now, honestly, because of folks like yourself and others that have educated me to other news out there, not the other news agencies. So, I'll have up on my computer, picture in picture, and I'll have Fox and I'll have CNN and I'll have Al Jazeera and I'll have RT and I'll have other agencies out looking at, and it's always, you got to parcel through it to where like, okay, where's the common ground in the story? Maybe the truth is somewhere in there. And this morning on CNN, you had Admiral Stavridis. If y'all remember him, Navy admiral during the Iraq War, warmonger, feckless sycophant for the administration. And then you had Brett McGurk, Iraq days, State Department, the czar for Middle East peace. That didn't go well. So we're calling on the same cast of clowns that have failed time and time again. And now we're talking about if what Donald Trump said this morning and whatever we hear from this press conference that he's going to have whenever he has it, I'm sure he's going to have to squeeze it in between his 9 rounds down at Mar-a-Lago. We'll probably even get the press conference off of the golf course. I wouldn't be shocked. George Bush style. Yeah. And then when you look at that and you see all these pieces together, it's like, okay, if we are intent, if it is regime change that we are after, if that is the truth in Iran, we are in for a long, dangerous, deadly war. Ask me how I know, because I fought in the last 4 of them. In the Philippines, where we're still fighting, in Israel, or excuse me, in Iraq, where we still have troops stationed, in Afghanistan, where we still haven't let go of that failure, in Syria, where, I was in Syria in the Joint Special Operations Task Force, and we were fighting in northeast Syria with the Syrian Democratic Forces, and President Trump at the time on X tweeted, "We're leaving Syria. Oh my God." And then months later, "Oh, we're staying." And now we're still there. And I'm telling you, for America, buckle up, because you're going to see the price of everything go up, especially if they shut down and seize the Strait of Hormuz. You're going to see China and Russia acting in diplomatic and economic ways. Buckle up, America, because there's going to be a lot of Americans coming home in flag draped coffins. The price of everything is going to go up. Things are going to get hard. And if you think that this war is for us, you're naive.
On that note, I think we'll wrap up. It's perfectly said. I couldn't have said it better myself. Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar, thank you so much for joining me here today. Where's the best place for people to stay up to date with your work moving forward?
Well, Jackson, I am on social media now, as people know, so you can follow me on all of the basic platforms, but I'm also on Upscrolled. So in addition to X and Instagram and YouTube and the like, I'm also on Upscrolled, another great place to go to where things aren't necessarily monitored or repressed. Great source of information. But yeah, and I'm also, my Aguilar for U.S. Congress, to go there to see what my platform is. And my platform is ending these endless wars. ending these wars of colonial empire, ending these wars where we have people like, and again, I'll say it now, and I'll say it again, in that the this war with Iran is not about foreign policy. We don't even know what the reason that we're doing it is yet. So you can't tell me this is about foreign policy. This is about domestic policy. The Trump administration is taking a page from the Netanyahu playbook on how to stay in power while you're under investigation for war crimes and or whatever other horrible things that are in these Epstein files. This is the Epstein war. This will go down in history when children open up their books and you see the Great War and you see the war to end all wars and you see the greatest generation. You're going to see the Epstein war led by a bunch of pedophiles and criminals. And it's sad because Americans are going to die.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Have a great day, Jackson. It's always great to see you.